Thank you so much, Dana, back there, and thank you all for coming. I am going to read something that's not funny at all. So really, what a problem. When one reads from a novel, one sort of has to, one of the many problems is, of course, you have to sort of set the scene and tell a little bit about what section you're reading. And I am reading from a part where the protagonist, Finn, has received news that something is up with his ex-girlfriend and he needs to come visit her friend Sigrid to get the news. So he has driven all the way from New York to a place called Navy Lake where he lives. So that's where we are. Hours of gray pines against a black sky toward Navy Lake. Outside of town, political signs had begun to appear in the fields, and then the large country lawns. Once he crossed into town, the yards went silent with their opinions. What did that mean for Hillary Clinton? He arrived many hours after midnight, and thus too late for Lily's book group. But it would gather the next night, too, he had been told. He exited at his exit, drove through a 24/7 Wendy's, and ate a crispy breaded God knows what in a roll that had the spring of memory foam as he continued in what seemed to be slow motion. The once solid sky had become gauzy, thinning and whitening into something like dawn as he drove the short causeway across the lagoon part of the lake, the roads empty and the town quiet. Daytime would have to be his night. He entered his half of the rental house noisily and collapsed on the bed and slept in a dark, parallel dream verse of running and hiding among trees. He awoke mid-afternoon, which in autumn in Navy Lake was already close to sunset. He showered, shaved too quickly, fixed some scrambled eggs, then drove slowly to Sigrid's for the book group and its news. He was early, so for a short time it would just be Sigrid. He remembered ruefully when Lily had referred to the friend she'd made in the psych ward as her book group. On the outside, in her life on the outside, she had an actual book group, though she often didn't like them much. They think they are sticking it to the man, she said. They don't know that the man is not men. The man is them. They think by meeting and drinking wine and pretending to have read the book, they are performing quiet, ritualized assertions against their husbands. When she tried to think more kindly about them, she said, they want the world to like them, to think they're both smart and nice. Why do they care? I have little interest in that sort of pseudo-salvation. I am there for the wine. Now Finn was meeting with them. Why had Lily continued with this club if she didn't respect them? Lily had said, when it was my turn to choose the book, my plan was to choose biographies of assassins so I could keep up with you, Finn. He knocked on the door now and rang the bell, both. One obeys one's doom. Thank you for coming, Sigrid said, closing the door behind him. Finn left his coat on. She hadn't offered to take it. I almost missed the house, he said. Didn't you used to have a big tree out front? It got old, Sigrid said, and then there was a storm. What has happened, he asked now, trying to get to the point. You may want to sit down, she said. Oh my God. He sank down on the couch, his coat still on. The room, the white built-in bookcases, the hardcover books, the Mexican art, the new Mexican art, the one Picasso print whose black lines matched the wrought iron railing on the staircase in the corner. The furniture in shades called Dawn and Pete, like one's very own friends from elementary school. He had once thought such a jacked-up, bespoke, loving home would have cured everything, but he and Lily would have only brought their own difficult and undissected unhappiness into every room. The ladies of the club met here each Tuesday night. He now sensed hate and witchiness and emptiness, not his or even theirs, but that of the universe, which had somehow gotten in and was swirling around. It shone around the absent ladies in whatever the opposite of a halo was, even though the ladies of the club had not yet arrived. "The group is not coming tonight," said Sigrid. "Okay," said Finn. "Lily has finally done it," Sigrid said. "Oh my God," Finn babbled again. He dropped his face into his hands. "She had taken a turn," Sigrid said, "and was not doing well." Finn pulled his hands away. He knew Lily like the backs of them. That is, he never looked closely, too busy reading his own palm. But he had loved her always in that necessary, twisted, hurting way. The actual end of her, though he had imagined it, he hadn't actually imagined thoroughly. How, he said now. His tears became icicles, now frozen mid-drip. "As I said," Sigrid, "she was not doing well." "Why wasn't she in a hospital?" "She was," said Sigrid. "Jack took her there, but once she was there, she refused to have visitors." "But how did she get out?" She didn't. The doctors wouldn't allow it." Finn didn't know why this had been turned into a guessing game. It caused him to stand, his coat still on. "She jumped from the roof," he said. "No," said Sigrid. He pulled his coat tightly around him. "She seduced the doctor in order to get his belt." He wasn't sure he actually said this aloud. Perhaps he did. For years, he had cleared her closets when she accumulated too many belts, their buckles like the stark, hissing mouths of snakes. "So how could she die?" he asked. There was a long silence. He sat back down. "How could she have died? They watch you like hawks in there," he said. "They take away everything, any accessory to death. There aren't even curtains, not a shoelace or an earring or a hoodie string." Perhaps she hadn't died. She had staged it somehow to escape. He would find her. She would know that. She would know how to do that. And this was the signal that she was counting on him to find her. Sigrid cleared her throat. "The shower." "But they don't allow you to have anything in the shower," said Finn. "Soap on a rope? I don't think so. And there's always a guard at the door." "She wanted to die," said Sigrid. "Yes." "The guard can only do so much," she continued. "They often have their backs turned out of a small sense of privacy." What do you mean?" said Finn. Lily wanted to die very badly. How well he had understood this through the years. Very little on God's earth could entice Lily into wanting for long to stay on it, even dressed as a clown, as she cheered on others to embrace life with laughter. Her doctors were useless, Finn said. They all should have been set on fire in a public square. Statements such as this were why Finn had no friends who were doctors. Sigrid took a deep breath. She held her face up to the shower and filled her sinuses and lungs with water until she drowned. He did not say anything. Muteness seemed to have grabbed his throat until he could choke out only one word. "Again?" he cried, as when the World Trade Center was bombed for the second apocalyptic time. Again, he had said then. She had tried this before, and perhaps at this exact hospital. Was this the same place where, when he had gone to visit her, she had sat shivering in a plastic gown with her doctor's initials written on her brow with a Sharpie? What was wrong with people? Could they never learn? The clown will always repeat and repeat. He sank down onto the sofa. "She always said the meds made her mouth dry," Sigrid said, clearing her own throat. But of course that wasn't it. Sigrid came over and sat next to him, but her proximity repelled Finn, and he shoved himself over to the end of the couch, away from her, to put his face back into his hands. "Oh my fucking God," he began to cry. "I'm sorry." "Where is she?" he asked. "They buried her right away at the Green Cemetery." Ugh. In Verdigris, it was the site she often spoke of. "No one called me earlier?" asked Finn. "Jack was there," said Sigrid. "We didn't know how to handle it." Finn had been the waning beau for so long, he'd never really absorbed being the ex. He was always just waning, but he could wax, he really could. He had. Every once in a while the phone would ring and there was Lily's voice, and he and she would wax again. He would take whatever she would offer. Sigrid continued, "We probably didn't handle it right. But with a green burial, things move quickly. The unpreserved body has to be interred right away by law. Plus, they had to move before the ground froze." Finn stood up, but his balance wasn't good. There was fury in him, as well as defeat, a vertiginous combination. Absurdly, he sat back down. His thoughts were spinning. "She called me, you know," he said. Sigrid scooted closer. He leaned forward on the couch. He picked up a magazine and put it back down. "Is the rest of the book group coming?" No, not tonight," said Sigrid. "Oh yeah, that's right, I forgot." His continued feigned alliance with Sigrid was purely tactical. "You and Lily," Sigrid said, "were never on the same page at the same time." What was she talking about, he thought. He then remembered others did not see his and Lily's as a mutual love, and why would they? There were too many jealous bumps, sudden disappearances, pointed rebukes. No one saw theirs as the passion that it was. It looked like weariness and defeat, and sometimes it was. But it was weariness and defeat as attachment. It was passion at peace, adoration gone awry and away, then returned. Love in the armistice, which one never had without a little war. Finn and Lily's love was a shared secret, though shared secret was one of those phrases that also meant its opposite, like cleave or overlook. He disliked Sigrid's overconfident assertions. They could entrap and encircle him if he did not resist. He tried to stay calm. "Different pages," he repeated. "These are perhaps the metaphors of the book club." "You two had something," she said. "I realize that, but it wasn't enough. You were almost never in harmony. She and Jack did a little better, but also not enough." Finn would not have it that he knew Lily less well than others, or that he did less well than others such as Jack. He would not accept that Lily had somehow duped him, because she hadn't duped him. He had understood her, and he would not allow anyone to think that he and Lily were somehow a sham couple cooked up on the afternoon cooking show of his mind. Their love had a deeply private source, somewhat secret even to himself. They had made a long ago chance meeting, computer repair shop, parking lot, exchange of numbers, into something heat-filled and operatic, but which kept retreating backward into searching, the way operas often did. She and Jack clearly did not do a little better, Finn said now. In arguments, Finn had a tendency to trim the terms so finely that he was no longer defending the initial idea, but was merely wanting to be right about anything at all, that is, not to be completely wrong. He stood up again. "Besides, what could you possibly know?" he did not say to Sigrid. Instead, he said, "Did she leave a note?" "For you?" said Sigrid. "Did she leave a note for anyone?" "Doesn't look like it." The "for you" seemed unnecessarily cruel. Sigrid stood too and began petting his sleeve. Was she trying to hug him in consolation? Was she flirting with him again? "I know it's so hard," she said, "so hard and unbelievable." "Don't touch me," Finn said. But Sigrid kept on. "I said, don't touch me." Sigrid went over to a table where there was a little plastic hair clip. She pulled her tinsely blonde flecked hair back, twisted it, and clipped it up on top of her head. Soon, he knew, she would unclip it, and it would come tumbling down in a tousled swirl about her strangely preserved face, its skin like cream cheese. Her red lipstick made her mouth a focal point, and she used it to listen with, making sound-retrieving grimaces and moos, a fielder with a mitt, a frog nabbing flies, catching every word, storing them in her cheek to eat later. She had always flirted with him, even though anything between them would jeopardize his job. and even anything not between them could as well, if vindictively she turned her spousal power Finn's way. And when last year he'd asked her repeatedly to stop her flirtation, she finally wrote Finn an email that said, "Never mind, I prefer my husband. He at least puts his cards on the table." That she'd believed he had any cards at all in this game, let alone a hand he was playing close to his vest, infuriated him. "He's your damn husband. Where else is he going to put his cards?" he had written. "Jack puts his cards on the table too," she wrote back. Jack was playing the whole blooming field. The entire half-drunk book club? Of course, Jack was just a player. And when this fall Finn found himself suspended from the school, he wrote Sigrid and her husband both an email asking for an explanation, but hers bounced back. She had locked him out for a month and then began to miss him and unlocked him, but too late. He did not return her messages, though her emails kept coming. He didn't know how to lock people out. "Ah, Sigrid likes you," Lily used to say with a big fake grin. "It's called unrequited love. I'm a little jealous." And he would give Lily the finger, and she would give him the finger back. "You were spared, Finn," Sigrid said now. "What on earth are you talking about?" When Lily was alive, he could forget about her for a bit and know he'd see her sometime soonish. But now that she was dead, she filled up the space of his head like fumes. She was inescapable. But no, she wasn't dead. This was all an enactment of some kind, as it had been once or twice before. This was once more one of her inscrutable whims. Couldn't they see that? He suddenly wondered whether Sigrid was responsible for Lily's death, buried her too soon, murdered her with her own hands. Spared because Sigrid cleared her throat of the phlegm that always seemed to be there whenever he spoke with her. They say never look when the body is removed from the house or from the building. Never look, or it will burn into your brain and become the source of never-ending sorrow. "Who told you that?" asked Finn. "They say," she said. He did not ask who they could be. He clutched his own hair in anguish. Why was she buried so soon? "As I said," said Sigrid, "the green cemetery she had requested in her will requires it." He did not know about her will. Also, there was a deep freeze ahead this way, and no one would have been able to dig a plot. In October, he'd grown dense. All the information was arriving twice. "The lake has already begun to freeze," said Sigrid. "I thought I heard the loud quake of it last night, though I'm sure I was wrong. But you know how early winter comes here." Even George Washington was afraid of being buried alive. He said to wait 3 days. You only waited 1. Ever the history teacher. "Don't you know that sometimes people are buried too soon and scratch marks are found on the inside of the coffin lid?" "Are you suggesting Lily might have changed her mind about wanting to be dead?" "She was always changing her mind about wanting to be dead. Who doesn't? Everyone does." A long, sniffy pause. "There was no lid or coffin," said Sigrid. "She was buried simply in a shroud." "But she wasn't buried with a pair of scissors," exclaimed Finn. "No scissors to cut herself free." "Good grief," said Sigrid. "Good? You think so? Where is she in that cemetery?" Sigrid was very quiet for a long moment. "Everything is unmarked except by something natural and compostable. I placed a large grapefruit there in its entirety, large and yellow. You may still see that. There's a kind of clearing in the trees." "Yes," said Finn, "there's always a clearing in the trees." Finn had sat back down, and Sigrid sat next to him again. "Oh, Finn, get away from me." He threw one arm out, accidentally bumping one of hers. He recalled once more her romantic booty call texts, his replies of, "Please don't do this." That was when she had blocked him, and his own requests had come bouncing back to him in mockery, and then the suspension. Now she glared at him. Her channel had switched. Her mouth was hard and choppy. Half of it was in a weird comma. "I suppose it was hard on you, having Lily go off to fillet another man like that," said Sigrid. Finn pressed his hands together, a cross between applause and a prayer. He stared at Sigrid's eyes, which had gone fidgety. "Is this a Latin class?" he asked. She tilted her head. "I'm going to make us some tea. Would you like caffeine or no caffeine? Lemon?" He did not answer. Sigrid continued, hesitating before getting up and turning toward the kitchen. "Lily is not your own invention," she said. "She is not a character in a play you yourself have thought up." Finn stood abruptly and left. That's the end. Thank you. And now we're going to chat.
Now we're going to chat. I have some questions for you. Okay. So, Lorrie, you worked on this novel for many years, right? And I was just wondering if you remember what first got you started on it, where you began with it. What was the first part of it?
No. It's nice of you to ask yes and no questions. It's very simple. Yeah, can you speak about the, no, I can't.
Well,
no.
Well, let me amend that then.
No,
you can.
No.
Okay.
I'll go ahead. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Oh boy, already?
But no, I guess no is the right answer. I mean, I think several things were coming together. I wanted to write about grief. I wanted to write about a woman running a boarding house.
Oh, okay.
And so the first pages actually written were the first pages in the book.
Okay.
The letters from the boarding house owner. And then I went back and forth between that and this kind of ghost love story.
Okay.
And then I sort of saw them as kind of in conversation with each other, having a sort of vibrating kind of correspondence.
Yes. And let me ask you about that opening. The book opens with the 19th century woman, Elizabeth.
Right.
And
Miss Libby.
Miss Libby, and she's amazing. Where I want to ask you, the diction and the syntax, very much of the 19th century. Her personality is so alive. What was it like to write that? How did you get that? And then, and was it fun for you to do that?
It was fun. It was fun. I did a lot of research about that time, and I read a lot of letters and diaries. But then I'm also living in Nashville, and there is a way that Southerners sort of speak a little differently from Northerners, and there's slightly more picturesque and a little more humor actually in the way they choose words and speak, and so her voice was just suddenly there, and I was working it.
So there was some research involved, but also you get kind of gripped by the voice.
Some people are I have noticed that I've gotten a couple of emails from people who say, you can't say stranger splain. That's an anachronism. And I said, I don't think it is, because splain is a kind of Southernism that existed all through the 19th century. But people think mansplain is so contemporary that splain is contemporary as well. But splain has been around for a long time.
Like, why don't you explain yourself to me?
Explain yourself.
Yes.
You got some splaining to do.
Right.
So I would invent a few things like stranger splain, because I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Stranger splain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. And then, and so for you, whether you're writing, I guess we'll just talk about novels since this is a novel, but is it, once you get that voice, so I know that Finn is in the third person, it's not in the first person the way the letters are, but it's still his voice, it's always in his head and his point of view, I'm pretty sure. So is there some point where you feel kind of gripped by that character voice and then that kind of leads you, or do you kind of know where it's going when you start?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't really feel I was in Finn's voice. I felt I was in his head.
Right, right.
And so I was tracking his thinking, but I did not know necessarily how he would say things until I actually had him speak out loud.
Right.
But I felt I knew how he would think, so I could track his consciousness.
And he often will think things that he doesn't say.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, another characteristic, but we get to see them, but
Right,
he doesn't say them.
I've done that with other stories too. I just put something in quotes and then say, she did not say.
I like that.
He did not say.
Yeah.
Because our lives are filled with that. Our lives
Yes.
are filled with, things we're thinking. And when we go to tell stories, we sometimes have ourselves saying things that we didn't say.
Right.
We say, and then I said blah, 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 blah. And your friend will say, did you really say that? No, I actually didn't really say that.
It's true.
I know.
It's true. It's true.
So, but in fiction, you get to put it there, but you can also acknowledge that it didn't get said.
Right.
Yeah.
As I Lay Dying, you have an epigraph from As I Lay Dying, and you also have a quote. My mother is a fish from As I Lay Dying.
Yeah,
and I was
heavy.
thinking about, and Addie does have a speech from Beyond the Grave.
Yeah.
Right? So can you talk to me a little bit about why that book was important for this book for you?
Well, I thought you can't have a book about driving a corpse around the South without conjuring As I Lay Dying. And As I Lay Dying is a great, great book. It's a masterpiece, really. And so I thought, I'm just going to use it and not try to avoid it. I'm going to, it really is part of the conception of the book. So there's dead bodies being driven around. There's the body in Faulkner, then there's Lily in 2016, and then there's another dead body that emerges. I don't want to give too much away, who is then also carted around to carnivals at the end.
Yes, and you do spend a lot of time on these bodies. And I guess there's also Max's dying body as well.
Yes,
but we don't see him dead. We just see him.
No, he doesn't get driven around.
He doesn't get driven around. No, he doesn't.
That's
he
a
probably would
southern
have liked
thing.
that. But
Well, he's in New York. They don't do that in New York.
no, they don't do that in New York. It's true.
It's the South. They do it in the South.
So, let me get to this next question for you. Finn is a teacher, as you are and I am. Do you agree with his take that PowerPoint is the end of civilization?
One of the beauties of writing a novel is you get to put in all of your deep, dark opinions and then completely deny them. I sort of do. About PowerPoint, I don't.
I agree.
I don't like it. I think people it's dumb, it dumbs things down, it's unnecessary, and people stare at the screen instead of listening to the speaker.
And they just write down whatever words are
There, and they're usually simplistically put forward, and there's nuance in what someone is saying, but there's no nuance on the PowerPoint.
Right, right.
So I don't like it.
I don't like it either. And also because I don't know how to do it, so that's another reason why I don't like it.
I know, that's another reason I don't like it. But we're not motivated to do it.
She didn't say aloud, but
Right, she did not say. But I would complain, I just came back from the American Academy in Berlin, and these very esteemed scholars and public policy people would put up these, would give these very interesting talks and then use PowerPoint to have really dumb sentences on the screen.
or a picture, right, or something.
Well, the pictures are better.
Right.
I mean, sometimes if you have a map or a photograph you want to show, PowerPoint makes sense. But it makes no sense to sort of reduce a complicated idea to a single little statement. And I'm afraid this is how children are learning at school now all the time. They just copy down the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of pressure to have a visual component to everything.
To everything, right.
Yeah, because
right.
of the times we live in.
Right.
But another one of Finn's theories I wanted to ask you about was he's very, he wants to reclaim conspiracy theories for the left, as he sees it's a way of talking about systems of power.
Right.
And he thinks of the conspiracy theories on the right are these kind of psychotic mirages, these political hallucinations. And I think, the book is very crucially takes place in 2016, right before the election, right?
Right.
And I think, so I'm wondering in your fiction, and whether this was always the case or is it more so now, do you think it's important to engage the wider political context that shapes the local lives of your characters?
Do I think it's important?
Or is it important to you? Or is it when you think
it's
about
inevitable for me. And I think it probably is inevitable for all fiction writers. I don't know how you can avoid it. It's like, it's just there. It's gonna get in to the world of your fictional characters. Whether you take it head on and put it in the center of your book is, something I probably haven't quite done, but it's always there. If you're trying to say something about life and about the world, I mean, that the intersection of wider systems and individual lives is just there.
Yeah, and in this case, I mean, without giving up too much, there is a really interesting way that the political context of the post-Civil War characters and that what happens there are kind of, speaking to this moment, maybe.
Right. What do we mean?
Well, I mean, I guess just
the Confederacy, the rise of the Confederacy
and the
really
successionists and the kind of the lost cause, sort of like this malignancy that's sort of still allowed to exist then and is now kind of still.
Right. The Confederacy never really died, or it's called the secession. I mean, it's sort of called the secession there, and that I found in documents. They always refer to it as the secession, and Confederates were secessionists.
Right.
But there is this way in which it just kind of, that nothing really dies completely. It takes a slightly different form, and and can come back and haunt you. And so this is really about being haunted, and about and things rising up again. But that, yeah. So
it's so deep.
It's so deep.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Finn and Lily. So it's very moving how much Finn loves Lily, and he gets a lot of joy even after she's dead, and he perhaps imagines she's revisiting him or she's revisiting him. Well, we don't want to give anything away, but he feels a lot of joy in her presence, and yet there's a feeling in the book that the sibling relationship is sort of kind of chucked aside for the love relationship. And I wonder about that, about whether, is there something kind of, are we meant to see the differences between romantic love, which can be kind of deranging, and sibling love, which seems to endure more? Because there's the siblings in the 19th century portion too, and there's a little sexual dalliance in there that's really quite terrible. So I'm just wondering if there's something are we supposed to connect his relationship with Max versus, because it ends with Max, really, and Max's funeral.
It ends with sort of with his funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah, in all of my novels, I have done this, and I wasn't really conscious of it, but I have the main characters sort of turning their back on something real and something they are sort of emotionally responsible toward, and it's always involving a sibling.
Interesting.
In exchange for some invented, fantastical, romantic idea that leads nowhere. So I guess it's my sense of how, love can be a waste of time. And that we all...
Romantic love.
Romantic love can be a waste of time, and we all fall for it. We all fall for it. And you can turn your back on people who really do need you for people you'd rather pursue and be with. And everyone has done that.
Yeah.
But somehow that's my sense of a novel. But you know, I'm interested in how people get caught in those little scripts and what they do there. And in the end, Finn tries to make amends for having turned his back on his brother. And also he gets very angry with Lily. Because he realizes, you know, and he's, you know, he gets very angry with her.
Yeah,
and says, my brother was dying, why did you do this? You know, that kind of thing.
Yes, and it's interesting because there is a kind of part of a ghost story, maybe, but this is more with Max than with, but he has a regret about Lily too. A lot of it does seem to be about grieving, does seem to be caught up in regret pretty profoundly. Like he regrets that he didn't say, has he said everything he needs to say to Max before he goes? Could he have done everything he could have done to Lily? And there's regret also in Libby's sections too. She regrets the falling out with her sister.
Right.
And then I was thinking in that story of yours, where there's the friend who's the ghost, the juniper tree. There's a lot of regret there too about what was done and what you know, and so it's a big part of grief because you do find. I mean, I find you've never done enough or said all the things you wanted to say to the person that you've lost.
No, of course you haven't.
And that's a huge, horrible thing.
Because then, and then the door is shut and you're left with A, B, and C, the things you didn't do, things you didn't say.
So you kind of want to tell the ghost or you want the ghost to come back.
So you want an opportunity, and ghosts are opportunities.
Yeah.
They're narrative opportunities.
Yeah, that's really... okay, I have a question, very serious question for you. Cats, though unseen, are named throughout this novel. We get Crater after Judge Crater, a judge who mysteriously disappeared in 1930. Thank you for that rabbit hole of Wikipedia of famous disappearances that I spent an hour on I didn't know about Judge Crater.
You didn't know
Never
about
heard
Judge
of him.
Crater?
No, now I know. Anyway, we also have in the book, we also have cats named Hercules, Quiche, Red. There's a pair of cats, Red and less Red.
Red and less red.
And Lumpling and Dumpling.
Lumpling.
So my question for you is, do you have cats? Have you had cats? And what are their names?
I don't have cats anymore. I don't have cats anymore. The last cats I had, if I tell you my cats' names, then you know my computer password. So I might not,
so you should keep it.
I might
You should
not
keep it to
divulge.
yourself. So in your work, characters are often self-aware, right? Which makes them often self-deprecating. And I see this very poignantly as a way of they're trying to avoid a kind of self-delusion, and it's very funny. But I wonder if you could talk about self-deprecation as a kind of humor. It's a kind of humor that, say, Donald Trump has never used, self-deprecation, right? It's a kind of special form of humor.
I haven't watched Donald Trump that closely, and I never want to, but the times I have seen him, he's trying so hard to be funny. He's kind of looking for a punchline every time.
But never at his own expense.
Maybe we'll start to see that, because he's desperate for a laugh all the time. Because he's trying, you know, he's putting on a show all the time. Hasn't he made fun of his hair?
No.
His own hair? I think he has. I'm not going to defend him as
How do we end
a
up there?
comedian, but self-deprecation. The question is,
just
how
I guess
does it work?
I guess yeah. What do you think about that as a form of humor, as self-deprecation? I mean, I feel like you're very good at it.
Well, it's age old.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. But it's how you. I think self-deprecation also has the benefit of the speaker's long involved thinking on the matter.
Yes.
And it catches the listener off guard because the listener has not thought that much about what this person is saying, because this person thinks about this thing every day.
Right,
Whatever the self-deprecating thing is. And so they've really refined it into a really good joke.
And it's very disarming.
A good line. Right, because so it catches people off guard. So comedians do it all the time.
Right.
Right.
Good ones do.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a novel now, and every time I'm working on one, I am sort of plagued with self-doubt, and I'm wondering, does this ever happen to you?
Self-doubt, never. I have no idea what you're talking about. Is this like the Judge Crater thing? I'm gonna have to go Google self-doubt.
Yeah. So how do you? What makes you keep going? What makes you do it?
Oh, you just have to be. You have to get yourself out of it. It's not really about yourself. I know it feels like it because you are the author, but you have to be really interested in what you're doing. But there's always a place where you just feel, I'm not good enough to do this. There's always that.
Yeah, like there's someone else that could do a better version of your precise book.
Right, like I'm not smart enough to write this book.
I'm more talented writer.
And you usually discover this when you're in the middle of the book. You've already traveled a great distance, and suddenly you think, I just don't have the chops to do this.
Right.
But you come back, you just get new coffee. That just means your coffee is worn out.
Okay.
So you start over the next day with
We're not allowed to have
coffee.
cigarettes anymore, right? Just coffee?
I never smoked and wrote. I smoked and drank.
You didn't smoke and write at the same time?
No, I'm so pleased I didn't have that habit. Because I used to write by hand. And how can you write by hand?
Wait, what is that, writing by hand?
How can you write by hand and smoke? I mean, you just can't. You couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
What about when you're editing? You wouldn't smoke?
No, but I know writers do that, but I never did. I never did.
Okay, I'm looking at, we should have some audience questions.
Audience questions, because we're talking about smoking.
I know, we're stop it. No smoking. We're all gonna, okay, oh my gosh, we have a lot. Okay. Do the jokes in your stories ever come to mind to you before the narrative? I'm thinking of the joke in You're Ugly Too, which has been my favorite joke for the past 11 years.
Well, the joke in You're Ugly Too is an old joke. That joke has existed for about 100 years. I would say literally 100 years. It's an old joke. Well, it might be a Henny Youngman joke. I think it is a Henny Youngman joke, actually. And you're going to have to Google Henny Youngman. He's disappeared along with Judge Crater, I think. But yeah, that's an old joke. So that existed already. And so that was easy to put in there. And it wasn't meant to sort of be my joke or the character's joke. It was meant to be Henny Youngman's joke. But it's just an old one.
Okay.
Old classic joke. It's like, why did the chicken cross the road? That's been around for a long time.
That's an old joke, yeah.
And it's so hilarious too, isn't it? That joke.
Do you think it's really that funny?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, not at all. It's a hilarious joke, yes. Yeah. I don't really get sarcasm. Okay, Louise Erdrich said that you capture the irony of the Midwest better than anyone. However, I lived in St. Louis for 4 years and did not pick up on any delightful irony. Is this because it's not really the Midwest, or is it a personal deficit? P.S. Big fan.
Well, is St. Louis the Midwest? We'll just interrogate the question, and we'll get out of it that way. Okay. St. Louis is partly the South, partly the Midwest, partly the West. It's the gateway to the West too. So it might not qualify as the Midwest. I don't know if did Louise say the irony of the Midwest? Because irony is not.
Yes, to capture the irony of the Midwest better than anyone, according to this question.
Midwesterners are not especially ironic. I would agree with that.
Okay.
In fact, I say that in one of my stories. I said, this took place in a faraway land. It's about a New Yorker transplanted to the Midwest. there were coffee shops but no irony, or something like that. Yeah.
Throughout your career, what is the most valuable thing you've learned about the writing process? I'm ready. Tell me.
The writing process? That there's no such thing as the writing process. That every writer has their own way of doing things, and you're free to mimic or imitate or borrow other people's habits and processes, but there's no such thing as the writing process.
Right.
Don't you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you like? And there's a little asterisk by like, and down at the bottom it says, or dislike.
They spend a lot of time on
I know.
that card.
Or find interesting about teaching, and how do you balance it with your writing?
I don't. Whoops. I don't balance it. There are interesting things to find in teaching. I don't mean to say I don't find anything interesting in teaching, but it's very hard to balance. As you know, it comes out of a different part of your brain. Your teaching brain is not your writing brain.
That's true.
Which is very weird because you're teaching writing.
Right.
But when you're teaching writing, you're far away from your writing. And you usually teach writing through assigning texts and texts. I can't believe I use that word, but whatever. Other people's stories, other narratives, and you read literature together. You talk about what you've read, and then you talk about what the students have written, and it's a conversation. And the students are usually very smart, very interesting. Sometimes they're even good writers. Mm-hmm. I've actually had great students, especially at the graduate student level. Mm-hmm. I feel like my former students have taken over the world, really. They're really, I've had such good ones. But of course, I've been teaching for a long time,
right.
So there's a certain amount of...
Do you always know which ones are going to be the...
Not necessarily.
Me neither.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I think, oh, that person and that person,
yep.
And you just know. And other times, for instance, someone might switch genres on you.
Right. Sometimes poets become fiction writers.
Or fiction writers become essayists.
Right.
That happened recently to me, recently in the last 10 years. And, so suddenly they're brilliant. They found the right way for their brilliance to sort of really take hold and express itself. But you don't, so there are surprises and also things that happen that you totally could see from a mile away.
I think that's my experience too.
Yeah.
This is a related question. What piece of advice might you have for a young writer?
What is young? Is there an asterisk?
No, there's no.
Young or old. For a young writer, I don't think I'd have any. The advice would be the same, and I'm sure you'd give it too. Read.
I was just going to say, I feel the biggest thing I've learned about teaching is that you're not really teaching them to write, you're teaching them to read.
Yes, you're teaching them to read, and read as a writer.
And read
so
as a
you're
writer.
Paying attention
and
to
then everything else kind of takes care of itself from there.
And you look at how the sentences are constructed. It's really kind of a construction business. You say, look at how this paragraph is constructed. Look how this narrative is constructed. Look how the ending is,
absolutely
picks up from something that was placed earlier. And you're looking at the mechanics of it all. But you have to read.
I think that's right.
And read good people, like Dana, like Alice Munro.
Well, we're almost at the end, so let's see. We have very little time left. Do you carry around a notebook? And if so, what do you write in it? Do you take notes on your phone?
No, I haven't gotten there yet.
I text myself notes.
You do?
Yeah, it's weird.
I'll get there. I might get there. I could see.
You write about technology so well.
How can that be?
I don't know, but I just feel like I saw this in this interview with Steven Soderbergh, and he said movies have been ruined by the iPhone. That's why that's why it's easier to make historical movies. because you don't have to deal with the phones. They ruin drama. But you use technology very well. I mean, you have the voicemail that Finn is holding of the dead person, of Lily. You have the GPS going, you handle it very well. And in FaceTime, you handle it. You just handle it extremely well.
It's not that present. It's kind of.
Yeah, but but you don't pretend it doesn't exist either.
Yeah, because you can't.
You can't. That's the thing.
Right,
it's
part of the world now.
Yeah.
But I only just got an iPhone in January.
That's why you're such a good
I didn't
writer.
have a smartphone. I had a little.
You didn't have a smartphone at all?
I had a flip phone with little drug dealer style
Yes.
text.
A burner
and
phone.
I loved it. It was great. A little flip. I mean, but then I had to go to Europe, so I had to get a smartphone. So I'm still learning my smartphone.
You're never going to write again. That was it. Now that you have a smartphone.
But do I have a notebook? Yes, I do have a notebook, and I encourage students to have notebooks. But I think my students are doing it on the phone too, taking notes on the phone. That's okay. That's okay. But taking notes, I think, is important.
We're almost done. If you could have a ghost follow you around, what author would it be?
Why can't it be Paul Newman? Why does it have to be?
Why does it have to be an author?
Why does it have to be an author? I know. Follow me around, and also, why would I want them to follow me around? What would they be doing? I don't know. Let me think.
It's disturbing.
Nathaniel Hawthorne was very handsome, but
So was Melville was very handsome too.
But he was gay.
That's true.
So, and Hawthorne was a problem because
I don't think it's supposed to be a romance. You just turned it into that.
If a ghost is stalking you, you're already halfway to a romance. You're halfway there. Hawthorne was a copperhead. You know, he was a racist and a Confederate sympathizer, so he's a problem.
So you're gonna go with Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
He was a good guy too. This is the last question. What do you find the hardest part of writing? Just quickly here. And what do you consider the most rewarding?
The hardest part of writing, and what is the most rewarding? The hardest part of writing is being in the middle of a novel. You know this. You're in the middle of a novel, and you're in the middle. It's like being in the middle of the sea, you know, and you don't know how to swim, and there are no boats passing by, and you just feel really lost. That's really hard. And then as we've already said, and you suddenly feel you're not smart enough to do this, and you're not athletic enough to swim these seas, or this sea. The most rewarding parts are little surprises that happen to you at your desk when the characters start talking to each other and you really feel they've come alive and you feel, oh, that's fun. Or when you take on something that's kind of hard, like one character killing another character, and it turns out okay, and you did it. There is that in this novel.
You're really good at writing that. That was great.
For those of you who like those kinds of scenes, there's one in here.
There is.
There's a character who kills another character. And yeah, I took it through step by step, and I thought, is he dead yet?
You had a lot of fun writing that scene, didn't you?
I did. And I thought, yeah, that should do it. He should be dead. He should be dead at this point, so then I could close the scene out.
So you're going to have a boarding house in your retirement? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm not doing that, but whatever.
Well, thank you.
Are we done?
We're done. Thank you so much, Lorrie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.